Okay, this is Business Networking for Success and Company Growth, Part 4, which is the fourth of 5 courses. Section 4, Building Rapport. Lecture 11, Personality Types, DISC Model. So, Chaffee, it's pretty obvious to me, having ran a grocery store for 20 years and having tens and tens and tens of thousands of individual customers coming in and buying things, and 300 employees, that everybody has their own personality. But having said that, when you talk about groups of people, it's amazing how you can identify, one group that if you pat them on the back, they're just so happy and they work really hard. And another one, you have to kick them in the butt and yell at them, and then they're really happy and they work hard. And we all have these different ways of being motivated. We all have these different personalities, different things that we like, dislike, those sort of things. And so that brings me to, what do you do when you're networking? Like, how do you identify what type of person it is that you're talking with so that you can build better rapport?
So great question. And I've done, just before we jump into that, I just want to say that there are a multitude of different personality type studies and practices and models out there. And then you got the Briggs-Meyer, which is one of the most popular ones that a lot of people have heard of. You got a whole bunch of them out there. And one of the best ones that I've ever used in terms of identifying the type of personality that somebody is so that I can create rapport with them is this thing that we call the DISC model. And it's primarily used in a lot of sales organizations, and it's been around forever. And first and foremost, I think that you should learn how to do this, understand the DISC model so that you can figure out what kind of personality you personally have, and then figure out what the other personality that the person that you're talking with it has, so that you can match and mirror them and communicate and build a rapport with them that way. So understanding your personality allows you and helps you with everything that you do, and then understanding the personality of somebody else also will help you build that rapport. So let's go through real quick the DISC model, because it's one of the, in my opinion, the most accurate models to use on people, as well as one of the easiest models that you can use to figure somebody out without going through a 15-page questionnaire to ask a whole bunch of questions about how they would react to a certain situation, right? So with that said, the DISC model, like I said, is primarily used in sales organizations to identify personality types. And there's 4 personality types based upon the DISC model. And the DISC model is actually spelled D as in dog, I as in igloo, S as in Sam, and C as in can do, right? So DISC is the DISC model, and it stands for different things. The first thing, obviously, is the D for dominance. And dominance is really somebody that is a goal-driven, as you can see here, direct, competitive, just do it kind of person. And this is when you think about a dominance type person, a strong D type personality, it's somebody that is typically in a sales position. It's somebody that is a type A aggressive individual. It's somebody that is not afraid to just go out there and start talking. They usually talk really loud, really strong voice. Sometimes they talk really fast because they're excited and they're very energetic. So it's a very strong type personality that they like to dominate. They like to be the center of attention, and they like to dominate a conversation. So if you see somebody that is in the middle of a group and you can hear them talking and they're laughing and they're boisterous and they're very confident, sometimes on the edge of cockiness, right? Those are usually a D type person or a dominant type person. So it's very easy to recognize this individual because they will stand out, right? Moving on then, we have the I in the DISC model, which stands for influence. And this is a very talkative, spontaneous, have fun doing it. And what comes to mind when I think of an influential or an I-type personality is the stereotypical bubbly blonde type individual who likes to go out and party and have a good time and be really fun. And so when you think of an influence type person, they like to socialize, they like to party, they like to hang out, and they like to have a good time doing all that. And so not necessarily for business, only they like to have a good time. So if you see somebody that's outgoing, that's just fun, that laughs a lot, that really just likes to go out and network and meet people, those are the I type or influence type individuals, right? And so again, very easy to recognize because they do stand out, they do pop out. You'll see them move from group to group and just have a good time. Sometimes these individuals are great to introduce you to other individuals just because they like to go around and meet with everybody and talk with everybody. Okay. So again, I type individuals are fun, bubbly, outgoing, spontaneous type people. Okay. Now, on the other side is we have the S type individual, or the steadiness S type person, which is a more stable, dependable, conservative, loyal person. And I like to think of these individuals as more of the supportive type people. So D or S to me stands for more of a supportive type individual. So a good S type individual is an office worker, administrative assistant, somebody that comes in, does their job day after day. You can count on them. They're dependable. These are the kind of individuals that you want working for you because you know that they're steady, they're stable, they'll come in, they'll do their job, and you can count on them to put everything together and make things happen and support you regardless of whatever it is that you're doing. Okay, so that's the S type individual. And so again, these kind of individuals will come in and really help an organization grow because they will buy into the vision of the leader and they'll support that vision and help move things forward. Okay. And then the C type individual, these are also very easy to recognize when you're talking with them because they're the more logical, analytical individuals. Okay. And so they're careful, they're organized, diplomatic, do it right. Only when I think of a C type individual, a C type individual is more like an engineer, an accountant, an attorney, some kind of technical field where they cross their T's, dot the I's. The challenge with a C type individual is while they're very analytical and they can do complex equations and complex thought processes, they tend to overanalyze and overthink things. And sometimes in the business world, we call that analysis paralysis, right? And so they'll overanalyze something to the nth degree when after they've looked at it a few times, they should just make a decision and move forward. Only again, if you want somebody to work with spreadsheets, if you want somebody to help evaluate CRMs or software programs or systems, you want a C-type individual. Okay, so when you're talking with somebody and you're networking with them, you can usually figure out whether they're a D, I, S, or C kind of person within the first minute or two, depending on how they talk, what they say, and sometimes you just even ask them, "Oh, what do you do?" They'll tell you what they do, and based upon what they do, you can sometimes start to formulate whether they're a D, I, S, or C type personality. And what I'll say about this model is that once you figure that out, usually somebody has a primary personality, a primary DISC, and then a secondary personality. So they could be a DS, which is a dominant sales type person, only they're very steady. They go into work a lot and get things done. They could be a CI, which is an engineer, which is very rare to have a CI, by the way, which is actually something that I've been, which is to have a very analytical type person that likes to go out and have fun. Usually it's a CS, right? An engineer that's steady, or a DI kind of individual. So usually, like I said, there's a primary personality type and then a secondary personality type. And again, understand when you figure out what kind of personality type they have, then you can sync yourself to them and talk their language, shall we say, right? You can mimic that personality type so that they can relate to you and you can build that rapport. Okay, so DISC is the DISC model. It's one of the easiest, simplest, and in my opinion, most accurate models to help you figure out what kind of person somebody is right away, to start building that rapport right away. And Scott, I just want to mention this again as we go through this, is that, you know, we're going through this model so that you can build rapport and work with people to help them. You know, the purpose of this, while it's usually done in a sales organization, is, you know, we don't want you to go out and start recognizing personality types and building rapport to people to sell something that they don't want or need, right? Again, everything that we're showing you, that we're teaching you in terms of rapport building should be used to help benefit people, help people grow, help people to fulfill a need that they have, and not used to influence people in the wrong way whatsoever. So again, use the DISC model appropriately. It is a very, very powerful model to use, and it could really, really help build that rapport with people and open doors with people. So good stuff.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you understand yourself and you understand the people that you're around. I think that was really a brilliant thing that you started off with, right? Is use, because you can take this test and then you know kind of where you are on all these different spectrums, shall we say. And if you don't know yourself, like it was some famous Chinese warrior philosopher who said, you know, if you know your enemy, maybe you can beat him half the time or something. Or if you don't know your enemy, you'll lose all the time. If you know him, like, you'll win maybe 50-50. If you know yourself and you know your enemy, then you're invincible, or something along those lines. And I think that that's really, really important, because you can then understand why maybe you're not able to build rapport with certain types of people, right? Or you need to work really hard with certain types, and other types you don't, because you go, oh, that person's really logical and analytical, and I'm telling fantasy stories all the time, so I'm the opposite of the spectrum. And away you go. And these things, by the way, are really good for relationships. Like if you're going to get married to somebody, and actually had an accountant that I worked for 25 years ago who really was into DISC. And he said, I'm going to do a DISC on you, and I'm going to do a DISC on Kathy, who I happened to be dating at the time. And they said, we have never seen two DISC that were so opposite. If I was high on this, she was at the bottom on it. Yeah. It was like opposites attract. Like it was, anyway, it was really quite amazing. But I think that that's one of the things that we really need to think about, is like, understand, you know, where are you on the dominant scale? Because it's not 0 to 100. It's, you know, it's not you're only compliant, you're not influence. You're, like you said, we are on all of these things. Where are you on the influence scale? Where are you on the compliance scale? Where are you on the steadiness scale? And know that, you know, these things are all in flux. And then you can have a better understanding of yourself, and then you can have a better understanding of the people around you. Because if you know that a certain behavior will trigger somebody, you know, if they're really logical and you're being really illogical, for example, then, hey, you have a choice. You can behave that way if you want or not. And if you know that if you're going to behave that way, you're going to trigger that person, you're going to have a problem. So if you want the drama, great. If you want this, you know, if you want the rapport and building better relationships and networking better, then you know what to do.
Hey, Scott, can you pull up that image again real quick? One thing that I want to point out that I didn't before was, if you see the words that are outside of the squares, right? So you have outgoing on top. And what that really means is that if you're a dominant or an I influence, I type person, then you're usually an outgoing kind of person, right? And on the bottom, you kind of have the opposite. But what you, like you said, you know, I'm complete opposites, right? Which is, if you're more of a C type or an S type individual, you're more reserved, you're quieter, like you're not as outgoing as those individuals. And then on the left and right, you have task oriented type people, which are focused on getting things done and doing tasks. And then an influence or an I type and an S type person is typically more people oriented. And so they're good for like team building and team exercises versus doing things, right? So that's what those words outside mean. And let me just give you an example of using this and understanding this is that, as you said, if you are an accountant, right, and you know that you're very a C type, technical, analytical type person, and you're talking with somebody that is an I type individual that's more outgoing and fun and everything. Well, a lot of I type individuals, they don't understand all the minute details that you might tell them. Right. And so if you're talking with an I type person, then maybe go at a higher level and get them to move forward on, the generalizations of things versus digging down to the exact details. Now, if on the other hand,
let me say just for a second there, Chappie, that in that example, the I type person, when you're the, I forget what, C type?
Yeah.
When you're giving those details, it's like running your fingers on a chalkboard to them, right? Like, there's certain behaviors.
Your eyes glaze over.
Yeah, like, oh, I don't want to hear this.
Right.
So exactly. you have to be aware, you have to be present to them and see how they're reacting and then go, okay, I understand. Like, I don't need to talk about line 8902 at this point in time. Exactly. I just need to talk about the general situation.
Now, on the flip side, if you're talking with an engineer and you're a C-type person, it's okay to, and actually you might want to go down to that line 892 because that's the kind of detail that they're looking for, right? And if you go too high, they're going, well, this isn't enough information for me. I need more information. And so they're not going to make a decision based upon that because it's not detailed enough for them. And so sometimes with the engineer type individual, you got to go down into the trenches. You got to go down a little bit deeper so that they get it in their head. And more importantly, if you recognize that, your job would then be to pull them up out of the trenches so that they can make the decision. Because if they're too deep in the trenches, then they're stuck, they're overanalyzing, analysis paralysis, and they don't move forward. And so again, give them what they need and then recognize that you've provided them what they needed and then pull them up so that they can make the decision, move faster with things. So great, awesome. Great, again, simple model to use that you can use on any everyday networking. And like you said, Scott, even with your personal relationships too, it doesn't have to be just in for business, right? It could be, your significant other, your family, right? If you don't understand your family members sometimes, which I know a lot of people don't, then you could use this model again to figure out what the differences are and how to communicate better with them.
All right. So that's lecture 11. Now we're going to go into lecture 12, NLP. It's always interesting when you get into some of the different modalities that people have built up over the last 100,000 years, depending on how far back you want to go with some of these things, and the wisdom that people have had, because individual people have not changed a lot over the last decade, 100 years, 1,000 years. I mean, we still get scratches, we still have babies, we still want to, eat 3 meals a day. We give birth, we die, we get in the sun, we want to go on the beach, we don't want to do the things that we should do, and on and on and on and on she goes. So there are people that study this and they come up with ways of understanding people so that you can, and how people work so that you can then build, in our case, build rapport easier. And one of those modalities is called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. So we're going to be programming you now in the next 10 minutes to be an expert networker.
Well, first of all, Scott, I'm kind of still stuck on the fact that you give birth. Well, anyways, NLP, let me dive right into NLP.
Yes, let's do that.
NLP is a powerful, powerful strategy for you to use to build rapport, to get to understand people, and to also direct people in the right direction, again, for their benefit, not just to sell them something. It's there for their benefit. And yes, if it's for their benefit to provide them a service or a product, then I get it. And again, don't do it if you know that it's going to hurt them or harm them or not benefit them at all. Otherwise, you're not doing what you should be doing. Okay, so again, NLP, just for those that don't know, or this is the first time that you might have heard of it, stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming, right? Neuro is your mind, how you think about things. Linguistic is the language that you're using, and programming is the habits and the tasks and everything that you do, right? So neuro-linguistic programming is what NLP stands for. And let's just, to simplify it, right? NLP has what we call modalities, and modalities we can break up to basically your senses, right? It's either auditory, what you hear, it's visual, what you see, kinesthetic is what you feel, right? There's also olfactory and gustatory, right? Olfactory is what you smell, okay, and gustatory is what you taste, okay? Now, within those 5 senses, the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, gustatory, and olfactory, you can break those down further into what we call submodalities. Okay, so for example, a submodality of visual is color. It could be black or it could be white. Okay, and so again, you have your 5 basically modalities, and then you have submodalities to describe those modalities underneath. So that's, you know, NLP kind of like a piece of it in a nutshell. Okay, just so you know what modalities and submodalities are. Okay, so understanding each level of modalities and submodalities, you can actually use those skill sets for yourself, as we said before, as well as for other people. And so using NLP, you can, for example, think of some bad memories that you've had that occurred in your life, and then reassociate those memories to things that are positive. So if you have a bad accident that caused you, you know, a scar or something, and you relate that to a visual something, when you see something, all of a sudden your scar starts to hurt, right? Well, that's an NLP type programming. That's a programming that you have, that when you see this item, when you see something, your scar starts to hurt. Okay, so you've programmed yourself to see something and then hurt. Okay, and so knowing that and understanding that, now you can go back and reprogram yourself to associate that thing that you see to something positive, so that when you see it going forward, your scar doesn't hurt anymore. Okay, and so that's just a little a taste of what NLP can be used for, is reprogramming, as we said, that programming piece of it yourself, to associate bad memories with good things, things that you like, so that going forward, those negative memories, those bad things, don't prevent you from succeeding, from moving forward, from doing things in the future. Same thing that could be said when you're talking with other individuals, is first recognizing what kind of modality somebody is strong in, or what kind of modality somebody relates to better, as well as whether they're remembering something or are they making something up. Okay, and so with that, we have a simple way of doing this, and there's many different ways. Only one simple way of doing this is what we call eye accessing cues. That means that when you're talking with somebody, the way that they look, the direction that they look, will tell you whether they're remembering something or whether they're creating something. Okay, and if they're creating something, it could be that they're creating it because they're making it up on the spot, and they might not be telling you the truth. Okay, so this is a picture of eye accessing cues. And let's imagine you're talking with somebody, and they look up and to your left. Okay, so this image is if you're looking at them. Okay, if they look up and to your left, that means that they're constructing something visual in their mind right now. They're imagining something in the future, and it could be that they're lying because you asked them a question and they're thinking of an answer, and seeing how they can relate that to that answer. Okay. If they're going to look up and to the right, that means they're thinking of something in the past that happened and they're remembering that. Okay. So if they're looking up and to the left or the right, though, that normally means that they're more of a visual type person. So visual type people, you can tell whether they're visual by not only looking at their eyes, if they're looking up and to the left or right, you can tell by their language. And so an example of this would be if they said, I see what you're talking about. I can imagine myself doing that, right? And so again, they're using these keywords that are visual, such as see, such as imagine, such as I can visualize that, right? And so if they're looking to the left or right and not looking up or down, then they're typically an auditory type person. And again, if we're looking to the right, straight to the right, that means that they're remembering something, a sound from the past. And if they're looking straight to the left, that means they're making up a sound that they can relate to. Okay. And so an auditory type person, again, you can look at the eye-axis and cues when you're talking with them to see if they're an auditory type person, or you can tell by their language to see what kind of language are they using. And a typical auditory type person will say something like, oh, I hear what you're saying, right? Instead of I see what you're saying, they'll say, I hear what you're saying, or that rings a bell. Okay. Again, that rings a bell is an auditory type phrase that if somebody says, that usually means that they're an auditory type person. So again, visual or auditory, and then obviously if they're looking down and to the left, they're kinesthetic, which means they're a touchy-feely type person, right? Oh, I feel that. I feel you. Oh, I can feel your pain. Okay. Again, whether you're using eye-axis and cues or auditory, I suggest you use them both because that will reinforce your opinion of what kind of person they are, right? So if they are looking up and remembering things from the past, and then they say, oh, I see what you're talking about, well, that is a cue that they're a visual type individual. And so why is this important? This is important because if you recognize what kind of person they are, then you can speak their language. Okay, again, if somebody is a visual type person and then your language is kinesthetic and you say, hey, do you feel me? Do you understand? Can you feel what I'm talking about, right? Can you feel my pain? And they say, well, I can't see that. Well, that's because you guys are speaking different languages. And so again, when you're using eye-axis and cues and you combine that with the language that they're using, you'll figure out what kind of person they are, what modality they are, and then you can speak to them in their language. And so if you know they're visual, you can say, hey, do you see what I'm talking about, right? Can I show you the results of doing things my way? Okay. And so again, understanding what we talked about in terms of communication earlier is that words are only a piece of it. Only when you combine that with these strategies of understanding their personality type and then going into their modality type and using their language, every single step builds upon each other and helps you build this rapport with the other individual. So NLP is a whole study, and we could spend actually NLP certification is over 7 days long. It's like crazy detailed, and I just want to give you a touch of NLP so that you can use it, start using it to build the rapport that you can with other individuals. And really, if you understand the basics that we're covering today, which is the eye-axis and cues and some of the keywords and the modalities and submodalities, you're going to understand a good portion of how to use NLP to start building rapport with people and building that connection so that you can build a relationship with them down the road. So again, using these cues to understand people and how to talk to people is really key to your networking success.
Yeah, and one of the things that can happen is you can learn to model people. And when you see somebody that's, talking with their hands a lot and your hands are some other way, you're not going to be creating the connectiveness. And this is something that happens automatically. Like if you watch two people that have never heard of NLP and they're in a really deep conversation and one of them's like this, the other one will be like this. You'll notice that they're actually doing, they're sitting back like this, watching the game or whatever. That means that they're in tune. It's really quite an amazing thing. So when you're meeting people, particularly for the first time, it comes back down to awareness first of yourself. Like Chaffee was talking about in the last lecture, like, what are you doing? How are you being, right? Because if you know that this is the way you're being all the time and the other one is like Chaffee, hardly moving at all, you're going to have a problem. So he's not going to, whichever way he is on the screen, he's not going to be aware of it. He's not going to know. All he's going to know is, I don't really like being around this person. They're too something. But you know, because you have the information. So instead of doing this, you just sort of gradually come down, nod your head like he nods, and then you start developing that rapport. So it's called modeling, and to me it's one of the most interesting parts of NLP because you can see it all the time. And my favorite story about modeling, and I hope I didn't say this in another class, was I was going across the Canada-US border into the United States with a friend of mine. He was driving. So the custom guy comes up, passports please, blah, blah, blah. And he looks at us and he starts, why are you doing this? Rah, 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 rah. His questions were just like, whoa, what happened to you? And my buddy was just like, rah, 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 in his answers. And I'm like, oh, we're going to spend 2 hours now in that building being cross-examined. And the guy goes up, he does this little thing. Here you go, have a nice day. And I was like shocked. I was shocked. And he says, I just modeled his behavior. He was being a jerk. I was just a jerk right back to him. And that's what he liked. And so it's really interesting, the advantages of being able to create rapport, because I suspect if my friend had been nice and timid and everything else, we might have been said, well, go over there. We're going to check your car out because I don't like you for some reason. But he ended up liking him. So there's lots of different things that NLP gets into. And of course, if you know the person is visual, or you know they're kinesthetic, or you know they're auditory, or the other two, then you can work that in. And again, it helps increase that rapport.
Yeah. And you bring up mirroring and modeling, or you brought up modeling. I want to bring up mirroring as well. And that is also a strategy and technique. And that's where you mirror the other person. And a good example of mirroring and modeling when you're talking with somebody, other than what you're doing on the video right now, is when you're talking with somebody and you're sitting down like we're sitting down right now, and you see the other person lean forward, right? Well, then the mirroring aspect is that you lean forward, okay? And then you see them lean back and they cross their leg, which you can't see me cross my leg right now. Is that you sit back and you cross your leg as well, only you cross the opposite leg because, again, you're acting like a mirror.
Right.
They are, right? Now, the trick, obviously, to all of this is doing it in a nonchalant way so they don't recognize you're doing it. Because, as I've been taught, a tactic known is a tactic blown, right? And so if they know you're doing it, then that defeats the whole purpose of you doing it, okay? So it has to look natural. It has to feel natural. It has to kind of mesh into the conversation that you're matching and mirroring them. And again, the purpose of you doing it is so that you can communicate better with them. You can open them up, make them feel comfortable and understand you, so that, again, it has to be more of a natural kind of fit versus a forced pushing them kind of deal, right? So make it natural, mirror and match somebody that opens them up and allows you to use all these other strategies and techniques to build that rapport so that they can understand what you want them to understand, okay? So, and that's really key, is, again, making sure that you practice all these things over and over again with yourself in a mirror and with people you know, so that when you actually apply these strategies, that they're natural and they're not forced, because if it's forced, somebody's going to recognize it and it just won't work. So practice is the key here, right? So take this lesson, take some good notes, and make sure you go back and practice, so that when you actually apply it, it works.
Yeah. I was going to go off on another story, but I think I'll pass.
All right.
The point is that you have, like, I just want to reemphasize, it has to be natural, and it might feel unnatural in the beginning, which is fine, because most people aren't going to be analyzing you the way we're talking about either. But you really want to make sure that you're not being really obvious, or you have to maintain your authenticity at the same time. Your transparency, your honesty, your authenticity, your integrity, all those sort of things have to, which is why you need practice, right? And if you need help with that, then Chaffee is an excellent coach and is able to do that with you. So with that, we're going to move on.
Awesome.
Okay, so now we're at the wrap up and next steps.
Okay.
Okay, so this is section 5, wrap up. And I'll start. Congratulations, you've come to the end of this course. We're very proud of you. We're really excited to hear about your successes, how how this stuff has been integrated into your life, into your business, and the results that you're getting. It's really important to us that you understand that we're not just here talking heads, want to talk, and then we're done. There's a Q&A below where anytime you've got a question, ask it. We'll get back to you with an answer as soon as we can. Although remember, we're not online 24/7, and so it might take a day or two. And Udemy, by the way, I've noticed does not post the questions immediately either. So if you're waiting a couple days, maybe it's just the system is a little slower than normal. But we get back to you really quickly. And the other thing I want to say is, in the terms of next steps, the next step really is to go through all the lectures again, integrate them a little bit more. If you went through it all in binge watching, then you want to go through, make sure you've got your notebook, your pen, you're making notes, and try things, and the beauty of it is, particularly like in the last lecture we were talking about NLP, is you could try that with your family, right? Like you're having dinner with whoever's in your family, and just try modeling them, ask them a few questions, and then don't model them, ask them a few questions, and see what sort of results that you get. See if you notice a difference. And we're betting that you will. So congratulations. We hope that you leave a good review, because that really helps us and encourages us to continue to make these courses for you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chaffee.
Hey, thanks, Scott. That's a great summary. And I do want to summarize or reiterate some points that we covered in this course that I think are really important for everyone to remember as they're reviewing and going through everything. And the first and foremost is that when you're going out and networking, when you're going out and building rapport, you have to be authentic, right? You have to be you. You have to be who you are. And so again, if you're going out and using these strategies and you're struggling and it's not who you are, and you're trying to be somebody different, it's going to come across. People are going to recognize that. You got to be your authentic you. And that only happens through practice. Okay. And so the first few times it might seem that way, and it might, you might blow the strategy, you might blow the technique. And the more you do it, the more you practice, the more you apply these strategies in your everyday life, as well as into a networking group, the easier and the easier it becomes, the more authentic it is. And using some of these strategies like the DISC modeling that we covered and the NLP strategy that we covered will actually help you identify who your authentic self is. And so again, first and foremost is be authentic, be real, be attentive, listen to people, pay attention to what they're saying. As we said, active listening is the key. Listen. That is one of the most powerful things that you could do, is just listen to people versus giving them lip service. And then also you want to make sure that you're providing value, that you're giving as much as you can. You're looking to really help people. As we say, go with a servant's heart, where you want to help people, where you want to help them achieve things. Don't use these strategies for just your own benefit, just to sell something, just to market something. That doesn't do you any good for your reputation. It doesn't do them any good. and in the long run, it's going to come back and bite you in the hoo. So stay away from that. Go with a servant's heart. Help people. Give first. Provide value. And then finally, using all these strategies, understand again, it's to build long-term relationships. So we're showing you how to build rapport in the short term, which will lead to long-term relationships. And people, remember, people like to work with people they know, like, and trust. And so these steps will help you to build that rapport in order to get to that longer-term relationship. And this is an ongoing process. Okay, so the more you practice, the more you get out there and use these strategies, the better you're going to become. And you're going to be able to then go out and meet a bunch of people and become that person that is the connector that will be able to help and refer other people to other services and products that they need that will help their life. So quick review of everything. Again, be authentic, be attentive, give first, and practice, practice, practice these rapport building strategies to build long-term relationships. So thanks again for going through everything. Go through everything again, take good notes, and go out there and practice, practice, practice.